Hello and welcome to our new Saturday morning segment where we go over the news of the week to ensure you're not missing those key moments that you should be informed on. The first one we want to discuss today is the Russia-Ukraine war. Believe it or not, we're reaching on the 24th of February, the third anniversary of that war. It started in 2022. When we actually see an end to that war by the end of this year, thanks to Trump. Saying that, Trump has this week said some crazy stuff that I want to go over with you. Now, this comes at the back of some peace talks that the US is having with Russia without Ukraine, which is crazy. They're having that in Saudi Arabia. It started off on Tuesday of this week, and they are negotiating the peace deal without the party that's being invaded involved at this stage and without much of the European leaders involved. Now, this obviously impacts the US, but also impacts heavily Europe as a whole and obviously Ukraine. But what did Trump say on this regarding Zelensky? This is what he posted on his Truth Social platform. He has his own social platform where he posts on it. Think of it, is what Trump said. Think of it, a modestly successful comedian, Vladimir Zelensky, he actually was a comedian, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion. That's not true, this figure. To go into a war that couldn't be won. It's true, the war couldn't be won against Russia. It doesn't mean Ukraine shouldn't have done anything, but I think we should have gone into peace talks way sooner because Ukraine was never going to win a war against Russia unless the US and all of Europe actually attacks Russia. And even in that case, it would have been a bloody war that would not have ended. This should have ended a long time ago. That never had to start, but a war that he, without the US and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe. That's not true. If you look at the figures, the United States countries allocating the most aid to Ukraine from January 24, 2022, which is when this started, to the end of last year. The US has spent $119 billion, which is 0.6% of their 2021 GDP. Half of that is military aid, which means that money that the US is spending is actually being given to the military companies in the US, i.e. it's injecting that money in the US, half of it. Europe, if you add all the European nations, excluding Japan and Canada, equals the same amount of money that the US has spent. So it's not $350 billion that the US has spent. It's not, the US hasn't spent $200 billion more than, Europe. It's about the same as Europe. And if you look at that, Denmark has spent 2.2% of their GDP on this. There's a lot of countries that have spent more as a percent of their GDP providing aid to Ukraine than the US is 0.6%. Going back to what he said, though, and Europe's money is guaranteed while the United States will get nothing back. One sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization in that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to the US, which is a fair point. It is more important to Europe. We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. He didn't say it's missing. He said he hasn't received all the money that the US has said it's going to give to him. It didn't go missing. He just hasn't received that money. He refuses to have elections. Well, in the constitution of Ukraine, you can't have elections during a war. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, the United States had an election during World War II. Well, the United States didn't have a foreign force on its territory, expanding into its territory, like Ukraine. Ukraine actually has Russia in its territory. So it's a different situation, and it's not within the constitutions. It's very low in Ukrainian polls. Actually, Trump, I think, said it was 5% he's polling. It's more around 40%. And the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections, Zelensky a dictator. He's calling Zelensky a dictator by not mentioning Putin, who is actually a dictator. The fact that Zelensky hasn't had elections for a number of years during this war doesn't mean he is a dictator. It's just not within the constitution to have an election. It's understandable because you have an invading force that's attacking your country and expanding into your territory. A dictator without elections, Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump. It's weird him talking about himself like that. Only Trump can do that. And the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, which is true. And Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died. And so it continues. Now, a lot of what Trump said there, a lot of it is incorrect, especially the part where, in a lot of other statements, he mentioned that Ukraine started this. It was Russia who invaded. It's very obvious that it did. Yes, Zelensky has taken, I think, some incorrect decisions. He has banned some opposition leaders, which he says are pro-Russian, which makes sense that you would ban, certain people that are aligned with the force that is invading you. Too many people have died from both sides. This needs to come to an end. And I'm glad that there is someone that is trying to ensure that this comes to an end because it's unwinnable. It's very clear that you cannot win this war against Russia. Doesn't mean Zelensky shouldn't have done anything. Obviously, if someone's invading your country, you have to take action against that. But we need to resolve this now and immediately. And so I'm glad that this is going to come to an end. I believe what will happen is that Russia will gain all the land that it took from Ukraine. There won't be any NATO deployment in Ukraine. That's a red line for Russia. I don't know whether Russia is going to give any concessions for Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't seem to be even involved in these discussions, which is insane. But what does that mean to you? It means the U.S. is going to build a better relationship with Russia. And that could lead to the removal of certain sanctions, which, they're one of the reasons why energy increased the past couple of years is due to this war. We get a lot of cheap, Europe especially gets a lot of cheap energy, gas from Russia that might be allowed to come back again. And therefore your energy, the good news for you as a person should be reduced. And obviously there'll be less people dying on the line. The next news that I think is extremely important is Germany is having their elections on Sunday. And it's very clear that the AfD, which is their right-wing government party, is going to gain a lot of seats. We don't think that they'll win. They're going to come as second. But this is a huge change for a country that has a, uncomfortable history with right-wing parties. Why do we think that the AfD is going to make a lot of gains? And it's one thing and one thing only. It's immigration. Germany has had enough of the massive immigration, illegal immigration that's coming into its country. It has caused a lot of problems for a country that doesn't have the power it used to have from a financial perspective, and it's impacting people's daily lives. We're seeing this across all of Europe. And what does that mean to everyone here in the UK, in Europe? All of Europe is going to the right when it comes to how they're dealing with immigration. We saw that in the US. And so how well the US does, how well Trump does, how well the AfD do in the coming years is going to dictate and give power to the other parties that are aligned with that same ideology. I'm not saying that's good or bad, it's just what will happen. In the next election here in the UK in about 4 years' time, Reform is definitely going to be at least second, and it actually might win the election. And that's heavily going to be dependent on how successful those parties are in achieving their objectives. So this is one to watch out for because it's going to impact all of Europe. Germany really is a big force in deciding how or where the EU moves in what direction. So if the AfD takes a big chunk of the seats, that's going to impact Europe's view and approach to immigration and how they interact with countries in Europe. The AfD is also very anti-EU, so we might see a change in the EU structure where countries start to fight more between each other because they have different objectives and different needs for their people. And a lot of people see that the EU is taking decisions that's negatively impacting their lives. And I keep coming on to this immigration point. To a lot of people, they see the immigration as the number one threat, not just from an economic perspective, but from a change of culture and values perspective, which is bound to happen if you bring a huge amount of people into a country in a short period of time without having the capacity or infrastructure to process and deal with them in an appropriate way. I made many videos on the impact of huge amounts of immigration, even if they bring talent to the country, they're beneficial. It still impacts people's wages. It still impacts the cohesion of that. It still has a huge impact on the infrastructure, and countries are not investing enough in those things to able to match up to the levels of increase in the population, which obviously impacts everyday people. I want to talk quickly about the Israel-Palestine conflict, of where I think we're actually heading. This week, we saw the return of the Bibas family, the kids, the baby and a child that were kidnapped by Hamas with their parents. The father was returned before, and they returned the other three members in coffins. And it turns out the mother wasn't even in the coffin. There was a random body included in the coffin that wasn't the mother. And it just showed Hamas did a whole parade around this, and it just showed how evil they are. Now, you could be, pro-Palestinians having better freedom and equality and rights and hoping they have a future state, and still be against Hamas. Hamas is a organization that is terrible for the Palestinians. It kills Palestinians, it obviously kills Israelis, and it destroys the case for the Palestinians. Now, what Hamas does is disgusting. At the same time, those events have impacted social media in a way where now people are proudly calling for the genocide and for the killing of all Palestinians in Gaza, because they're trying to make the case that there are no civilians, when the reality is that nearly 50% of the population in Gaza are under 18. But it seems like there's this kind of wave of someone telling everyone to make the case that there are no civilians, that we need to destroy Gaza, absolutely. I mean, first of all, Gaza is already destroyed. There's nothing much left to it. And what this indicates to me is that Israel is going to go back in there and really make it much worse. We can see the information kind of coming in, and the support from not just in Israel, but in the US and in Europe, for the case to just go even harder on Gaza, which will kill thousands of children. I mean, we already have more than 10,000 children dead in Gaza. And people are just proudly saying, let's kill them all, which makes me think that they have now become Hamas in a way. That's the ideology of Hamas, of not differentiating between civilians and combatants. They're all the same, is what their ideology is. And people are now having that ideology from the other side, which is they're all the same. Let's just kill them all. So I'm really deeply worried with what's going to happen. But it's very clear that Israel will go back into Gaza, maybe not put troops, but will be destroying a lot more of Gaza. And we'll be seeing that probably after the release of all the hostages, at least are alive. And it's obvious that Trump supports this. These are our three main topics for this week. If you have any comments or want to raise something, do put in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, do hit the like or follow button. Thank you very much.